The city of Lakefall tries to drown you in wind. It howls off the water, smelling of cold metal and old fish, and tonight it was rattling the big plate glass windows of Marisol and Maple. It was almost 10 o'clock at night. The bistro was finally glowing with that empty, end-of-shift light. The kitchen was closed, the music turned down low, and I was counting the minutes until I could soak my feet. I was 24, and my entire life felt like it was measured in 12-hour shifts. Only one table remained, a three-top of corporate guys, their ties loosened, their voices too loud, nursing the dregs of a very expensive bottle of scotch. I'd been giving them the polite, please leave stare for 20 minutes, but they were deep in their own fog. Finally, I picked up the check presenter. "Gentlemen, can I get you anything else or just the check?" I kept my voice light, the one I used to pay my rent. The one in the middle, the loudest, leered up at me. His shirt collar, once white, had a nasty blue ink stain blooming near the throat. His eyes were glassy. "How about a little smile, sweetheart?" he slurred, his words thick. "Your face looks like it's gonna break." I felt the familiar heat rise in my throat, the metallic taste of anger. I pushed it down. Just the check, then. I placed the black leather folder on the table. He didn't reach for his wallet. He reached for me. His hand, damp and hot, shot out and closed around my wrist. It wasn't a friendly touch. It was a grip. A claim. He tugged, trying to pull me off balance. I said. He leaned in, his breath a foul wave of scotch and onions. "Smile, or maybe you need me to make you smile." I didn't think. My body moved before my brain caught up. It was pure, distilled instinct. My left hand, the one holding my order pad, shot out. The sound it made wasn't a slap. It was a crack, like a dry branch snapping in a dead quiet forest. It echoed off the high ceilings, louder than the wind, louder than the quiet jazz playing from the speakers. The music seemed to die. The clinking of glasses from the bar, where my manager was polishing, stopped. Total, suffocating silence. The man, Inkstain, stared at me. His face, blotchy from the alcohol, was turning a furious, deep red. The print of my 5 fingers was already rising on his cheek. His 2 friends looked frozen, their mouths half open. You hit me," he whispered, as if he couldn't process the fact. Then his voice dropped, turning into something low and ugly. "You're going to regret that. You have no idea who I am." He started to rise from his chair, his eyes narrowing. "You will be begging for your job back by tomorrow. No, not your job. You'll be begging for mercy." My wrist was throbbing where he'd grabbed it, but my whole body was vibrating, a low-level tremor of adrenaline and terror. "Sir, you need to pay your bill and leave." My voice didn't even shake. I surprised myself. "Or what?" he sneered, shoving his chair back. That's when the other chair scraped. In the darkest corner of the bistro, a table I'd barely serviced, a man stood up. I hadn't really registered him. He was alone, just a silhouette in an expensive suit. But now, in the dim light, he was composed. He wasn't a big man, not a bouncer type, but he seemed to take up all the space in the room. He wore a suit of ash-gray wool that probably cost more than my last 3 months' rent. His eyes were calm, almost bored, and they weren't looking at Inkstain. They were looking at me. This was Cashin Rolfo. I didn't know him, but I knew him. Everyone in Lakefall knew the name, the Rolfo Circle. They didn't run the city. They owned the foundation it was built on. You saw their name on freight companies, on construction sites, on high-end restaurants, and you heard the whispers. He moved silently. He walked to the counter, not the table, and placed a black, heavy metal credit card down. His voice was soft, but it cut through the silence like a razor. Every syllable was clear. "My apologies," he said, addressing the room, not just me or my manager, "that this happened in my presence." Inkstain's 2 friends, who I'd mistaken for fellow office workers, suddenly looked sharper. They straightened up and took a step toward their boss, posturing. One of them put his hand inside his jacket. Before he could move another inch, 2 men separated from the shadows near the door. Rolfo's men. They hadn't been there a second ago. Or maybe they'd been there all night. They didn't draw weapons. They didn't say a word. They just stood in the way. They were built like brick walls and had the deadest eyes I'd ever seen. The pressure in the room changed, became heavy and thick, like the air before a lightning strike. Inkstain's men looked at Rolfo's men, and all the fight just drained out of them. They visibly deflated, their hands becoming very, very visible. Inkstain looked from his friends to Cassian Rolfo, and his drunken bravado shattered. He saw something the rest of us didn't. He saw a predator. "This isn't over," and he spat, but his voice was thin and reedy. He grabbed his coat, scrambling, almost tripping over his own chair. He didn't even sign the check. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "People at the harbor are going to hear about this. They'll be asking after you." And then he was gone, practically running out the door, his 2 bodyguards scrambling right behind him. The bistro was quiet again, but the silence was different. It was heavy. Cassian Rolfo picked up his card, his gesture to my manager, a silent, take care of his bill and mine. Then he turned to me. My heart was a drum against my ribs. He looked me up and down. Once. It wasn't a leer, like Inkstain's. It was an inventory. He was cataloging exits, threats, weaknesses. He was checking the locks on a property. "You owe me nothing," he said. His voice was still quiet, a low rumble. It was meant to be a kind statement, but it didn't feel kind. It felt like a transaction I hadn't agreed to, a debt being settled before it was even incurred. My manager, Mr. Davies, rushed over, pale and sweating. "Mr. Rolfo, sir, my deepest apologies. We don't condone violence. I'll speak to her." Rolfo held up a single, gloved hand, and Davies's mouth snapped shut. Rolfo looked back at me. "You handled yourself." "It wasn't a compliment. It was a statement of fact." He nodded once, and he and his shadows were gone. Just gone. The door clicked shut, and the little bell above it tinkled, absurdly cheerful. The other customers, the few who were left, threw down cash and fled. Nobody wanted to be in the room where that had happened. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely hold the pen. I went to the back office to sign my timesheet. My shift had officially ended 35 minutes ago, a lifetime ago. I grabbed my jacket. As I passed the counter, I saw it, a business card. It was thick, white, expensive cardstock. No name, no company, just a string of numbers, a code. One of Rolfo's men stepped back inside. He must have been waiting. He placed the card directly in my hand. His fingers were cold. "Mister," Rolfo said. The man recited, his voice monotone. "When you feel you're being followed, text." "Not if... when?" I snatched the card and ran. The rain that had been threatening all night was finally here. Coming down in cold, driving sheets, the employee parking lot was empty. Just my beat-up sedan under a flickering orange streetlight. And one other car. A black sedan, parked in the shadows, its headlights off. It was just sitting there, silent. My heart climbed into my throat. I didn't run. I pulled out my phone, my fingers fumbling, and pretended to make a call. I raised my voice to cut through the wind. "Hey, yeah, I'm just getting to my car. No, the shift was fine. I'll be home in 10. I kept walking, my keys in my fist, one key sticking out between my knuckles like a tiny, useless knife. I was watching the car, gauging its reaction. The lights stayed off. The engine didn't start. Nothing. It just sat there, watching me. That was almost worse. I got in my sedan, locked the doors with a slam, and jammed the key in the ignition. The engine turned over with a wet cough. I peeled out of the parking lot, my tires squealing on the wet asphalt. I checked my rearview mirror. The black sedan didn't follow. It just sat there, its lights still off, an unblinking eye in the rain. The drive to my apartment was only 15 minutes, but I checked my mirror every 10 seconds. No one. I parked 3 blocks away from my building, just in case, and walked the rest of the way. My hood pulled up. My building was a 3rd-floor walk-up with a buzzing fluorescent light in the stairwell. I took the stairs 2 at a time, listening. The only sound was my own breathing and the rain lashing against the hallway window. I got to my door, apartment 3B, I dug for my keys, and that's when I saw it. A thin, fresh scratch in the metal of the lock plate. My blood went cold. I pushed the door. It swung open silently. It was already unlocked, jimmied. I froze. "Hello?" My voice was a pathetic squeak. Silence. I stepped inside, my back to the wall, grabbing the first thing I could, a heavy glass bottle I used for recycling. Kitchen, clear. Bathroom, clear. Living room, clear. Nothing was gone. My old laptop was still on the coffee table. The emergency jar on the counter still had the $47 in cash I'd been saving. My TV was still there. They hadn't taken anything. They had left something. On the center of my small kitchen table, placed perfectly under the light, was a small, heavy, metal object. It was beautifully crafted, a tiny, perfect golden crow. I didn't touch it. I'd seen that symbol before, spray painted on buildings near the wharf, the gilded crows, the drunk's warning, people at the harbor. My phone buzzed in my pocket, making me jump so hard I almost dropped the bottle. An unknown number. A new text message. "The slap has a price." Pure ice. It flooded my veins, stopping my breath. This was real. This wasn't a drunk's empty threat. This was a promise. I stared at the golden crow. I stared at the text message. My apartment, my only safe place, felt like a cage. I dug in my jeans pocket, the heavy, blank card, Cassian Rulfo. My fingers were shaking, but I unlocked my phone and typed in the code. I didn't know what to say. I didn't want his help. I didn't want to be in his debt. He was just as dangerous as they were, just in a different way. But I was out of options. I typed out the only thing I could think of. "I need advice, not a favor." I hit send. The reply was almost instant, so fast it terrified me. My phone buzzed in my hand. 4 words. "Don't stay home tonight." I grabbed my jacket, the same one I'd just taken off my keys, and my phone. I left the lights on. I left the tiny, golden crow sitting on the table, a glittering monument to how completely my life had just been derailed. I walked out of apartment 3B and didn't lock the broken door behind me. He sent an address, nothing more. A 24/7 coffee shop in the Canal District, the part of town that never slept, smelling of diesel, river water, and rust. The rain was still lashing down, turning the city into a watercolor of smeared neon and shadow. The cafe was called the All Night. It was a fluorescent oasis in the middle of a dark, industrial block. The air inside was thick with the smell of burnt espresso, the hot, metallic tang of machine oil from the nearby workshops, and the damp chill of the rain every time the door opened. It was probably midnight. A couple of truckers nursed thick white mugs at the counter, and a woman in scrubs was asleep in a corner booth. I saw him instantly, back booth facing the door, and he was just sitting there, a cup of coffee untouched in front of him. He didn't wave. He just watched me as I dripped my way across the linoleum floor. I slid into the vinyl booth. It sighed in protest. "That was fast," I said. My voice was tight. He didn't acknowledge my sarcasm. He pushed a piece of paper across the Formica table. It wasn't a napkin. It was a heavy stock sheet, folded twice. I opened it. It was a map, drawn by hand in thick black ink. It showed the Crescent Wharf area, the grid of warehouses and shipping yards that choked the mouth of the canal. Several buildings were marked with small, precise red dots. "What's this?" I asked, my voice low. "Places you shouldn't go," he said. His voice was that same low rumble I remembered from the bistro. "The red dots are properties controlled by the Gilded Crows." He tapped a route marked in blue, a main thoroughfare that snaked through the district. "This is the main drag, lit all night. You stick to this. You don't take the cutoffs, no matter how quick they look." The assumption of control bristled against my skin, cold and sharp. "I'm not going to the wharf, Mr. Rulfo, and I don't need an escort." "You don't," he agreed, nodding slowly. His eyes never left mine. They were a strange, flat gray, like the lake on a winter morning. But they need you to be scared. They broke into your apartment not to take anything, but to prove they could. They left the crow so you'd know who it was. They want you looking over your shoulder. They want you running. Running where? To them? To apologize? Or to the police, who won't do anything about a broken lock and a metal trinket? Or, he paused, letting the word hang in the stale air. To someone like me. I held his gaze. Who is he? The man at the bistro. Kellen Brisk. Cassian said the name like it was something unpleasant on his tongue. He's not a boss. He's a tool, a lawyer, technically. He runs interference, greases palms. He works for the Gilded Crows. The insurance people. I said I'd heard whispers from other shop owners, from Mr. Davies, my manager, who always looked pale after a visit from Wharf Security. They call it Harbor Security Contributions, Cassian corrected me. They press owners, vendors, anyone who relies on the port to donate. If they don't, deliveries get lost, a small fire starts, or a drunk executive harasses a waitress just to see how far she'll bend before she breaks. My blood ran cold. The random, ugly encounter at the bistro suddenly snapped into focus. He did it on purpose to test the bistro. To test you, he said. To establish a reason to apply pressure. You reacted unexpectedly. You embarrassed him. You embarrassed the crows. Now it's not about business. It's about pride. I leaned back against the sticky vinyl. The adrenaline from the apartment was wearing off, leaving behind a deep, bone-aching weariness. You're him, I said. He raised a single, dark eyebrow. You're the kind of man my mother warned me about. A flicker of something not quite humor, maybe just irony, touched the corner of his mouth. Your mother was right, he said, but tonight I'm useful. Useful to who, you, or me? You don't do this for free. This feels like you're just cleaning up your competition. The crows are a problem, he said, deflecting. They're loud. They're messy. They draw attention. He leaned forward slightly, and the intensity in his gaze made me want to shrink back. The Metropolitan Anti-Corruption Office, MACO, is already sniffing around the docks. They're looking into a fake charity, the Harbor Halo Foundation. It's the Crow's laundry machine for all that insurance money. They're getting sloppy. And Brisk's public tantrum, followed by this escalation with you, is very sloppy. So I'm just a loose end, I said. The Crows want to make a public example of you, he said, ignoring my jab. His voice was flat, a statement of fact. They want every server, every bartender, every shop owner in this city to see what happens when you don't bow. They want you broken. And what do you want? I challenged him, my voice rising. You want me to owe you. You step in, the knight in the ash gray suit, and then I'm in your debt. That's how this works, isn't it? That's the price for your advice. He didn't deny it. The honesty was more chilling than a lie would have been. He just held my gaze, letting my accusations settle. Instead of answering, he changed the subject. The shift was so sharp it felt like a slap. Who lives with you? The question hit a nerve, a raw, exposed one. Why, I snapped. Because they won't just come for you. They'll find what you care about. Who is in apartment 3B when you're not? I hated him for asking. I hated him more for being right. I looked down at the map of the wharf, at all those red dots. My mother, Mara. The words felt like they were being dragged out of me. She's not there now. She works the night shift at a private hospital up on the hill. I felt compelled to add more, to make him understand. She has hearing loss, partial, from an infection years ago. She wouldn't hear them, even if they... I couldn't finish the sentence. The image of her coming home, tired, to that broken lock and that golden crow or worse. Cassian's expression didn't change, but his eyes hardened, as if focusing on a new target. He understood the vulnerability perfectly. We need a signal, he said, pulling out his own phone. A sleek, featureless black slab. If you're in immediate danger, if you can't talk, send me a single period. Just a dot, nothing else. I'll know. I nodded, my throat tight, A single dot. It felt like the smallest, heaviest thing in the world. He looked at his watch. A simple, elegant timepiece. I've been here too long. So have you. He stood up, dropping a $20 bill on the table for a $3 coffee. Stay here. Finish your coffee. Leave 5 minutes after me. Take the main road. Don't go home. He walked out. The bell over the door tinkled, a cheerful sound in the oppressive silence. The rain was torrential now, a solid wall of water beating against the glass. I watched him get into a black sedan parked across the street. The car was immaculate, its finish reflecting the watery neon. It looked suspiciously like the one that had been parked outside my lot. So he'd been watching before I even texted. The thought made my skin crawl. He hadn't just been waiting, he'd been observing. I wrapped my hands around the cold coffee mug. My mind was racing. I needed a plan. My mom, her shift ended at 6 in the morning. I had to get to her. I had to get her somewhere safe. I saw a movement outside. Across the street, standing under a broken awning, was a man in a soaking wet hoodie. He wasn't trying to stay dry. He was just standing in the shadows, watching the cafe. He raised his phone. The flash was blinding, even through the rain-streaked glass, and he took my picture. My own phone vibrated on the table, the buzz shockingly loud. A new text from Cassian. Don't turn around. My breath hitched. My heart hammered against my ribs. I stayed perfectly still. My eyes locked on my own reflection in the dark window. I could see the man in the hoodie behind me, a ghostly image. He lowered his phone and stepped back. A sound cut through the steady roar of the rain, the high-pitched, angry scream of a motorcycle engine, revving way too high. It was coming fast. It didn't stay on the road. The bike, matte black, no license plate, jumped the curb. It roared across the sidewalk, its single headlight aimed right at the window where I was sitting. I didn't even have time to scream. I threw myself backward, tumbling out of the booth, my shoulder hitting the hard floor. A split second later, a glass bottle shattered against the window, exactly where my head had been. The sound was like a gunshot in the tiny cafe. Shards of glass exploded inward, spraying across the table, glittering in the coffee I'd spilled. The motorcycle was already gone. It fishtailed back onto the street, its engine screaming, and disappeared into the industrial maze of the wharf. "Hey, you okay, miss?" the trucker at the counter shouted, already on his feet. The waitress had dropped a tray. I was shaking, my knees raw from hitting the floor, but I wasn't just scared, I was furious. This wasn't a game. This wasn't a warning. This was a message. I pushed myself up, brushing glass off my jeans. "I'm fine," I called out, my voice steadier than I felt. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I walked back to the booth and looked at the mess. Among the shards of cheap, thick diner glass was a larger piece of dark green glass from the bottle. I picked it up, careful of the jagged edges. It felt heavy, real. I wrapped the shard in a napkin and shoved it deep into my jacket pocket. Evidence. I looked outside. Cashin's car was still there, parked across the street in the same spot. He hadn't moved. He'd been watching. He'd seen the whole thing. Through the rain, I could just make out his silhouette, unmoving, behind the wheel. He hadn't gotten out. He'd just watched. And as I met his gaze from across the street, I thought I saw something. Not pity, not anger. A flicker of faint, approving pride. It made me angrier than the bottle had. I walked out of the cafe, the bell tinkling my exit. The rain hit me like a physical blow, cold and sharp. I didn't even look both ways. I stalked across the street and pulled open the passenger door of his sedan. It was unlocked. "Get in, Art," he said, as if I hadn't just done so. I slammed the door, shutting out the storm. The inside of the car was silent, warm, and smelled like expensive leather and something faintly metallic. Like him. "They tried to hit me," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "It was a welcome," he replied, his hands resting lightly on the steering wheel. "A hello from the crows." That was more than a hello. Al, it wasn't meant to connect. It was meant to confirm you're alone and to make you run." He put the car in gear, the engine a deep, silent thrum. "They're trying to herd you." He started to pull away from the curb. "There's a motel on the North Highway. Clean, anonymous. I'll get you a room for the night. You can be there in 15 minutes. "No." He stopped the car. "No." "No motel? I'm not hiding." I looked at him, my reflection a pale mask in the side window. "I'm going to the hospital. I'm getting my mother." "That's a bad idea, Lena," he said, his voice flat. "They'll be watching the hospital. They'll be watching your apartment. They'll be watching her. Then it's a good thing I'm not going alone. Am I?" I stared at him, my new, furious courage hardening into a plan. "I'm not going to be herded. I'm going to my mom, and I'm going to get her somewhere safe. Somewhere, one of your places." I laid out my one condition. We go to the hospital, we get her, and we do it in this car. Cassie and Rulfo looked at me for a long, silent moment. The only sound was the rhythmic thwack-thwack of the windshield wipers, slicing through the rain. He was recalculating. I had changed the equation. I wasn't the frightened waitress anymore. Finally, he gave a single, sharp nod. "Buckle up," he said. The car slid silently into the rain-slicked streets. We drove through the spine of the city, heading up toward the hill, where the private hospitals and the old money estates looked down on the rest of us. The inside of the sedan was a silent, leather-bound bubble. The only sound was the rhythmic thwack-thwack of the windshield wipers, cutting through the solid wall of rain. I could feel Cassian's presence next to me, a stillness so absolute it was louder than a shout. He broke the silence first. He didn't speak. He just pressed a button on the gleaming console. The dashboard lit up, and a man's smooth official voice filled the car. "And the Urban Public Safety Committee, or UPC, today announced the launch of its Clean Streets initiative in a press conference this morning. Commissioner Thorne promised a 30% reduction in low-level infractions by the end of the fiscal year, targeting unauthorized vending, graffiti, and vagrancy." I must have made a sound, a short, bitter laugh. "Clean streets," I said, the words tasting like ash. "That's what they always call it." Cassian didn't look at me, his eyes on the road. "You don't approve of the UPC. I approve of cleaning. I don't approve of sweeping people under the rug and calling the job done." The sterile, bureaucratic voice on the radio felt like an insult after what had just happened at the cafe. That bottle hadn't been a low-level infraction. I found myself speaking before I could stop. "My brother, Ricky. He got involved with a crew on the South Side when he was 17. Just small things. Painting where he shouldn't. Running messages. Then, one night, the police decided to clean the streets. They rounded up everyone. Ricky ran. He tripped. It was bad. He's gone now. Far away. Doesn't call." The car was silent again. The radio voice was still droning on about city ordinances. But Cassian had turned the volume down to a murmur. He didn't say, "I'm sorry for your loss." He didn't offer any empty, polite sympathy. He just drove, his hands steady on the wheel. He'd listened. He'd heard what I said. And he filed it away. That lack of a hollow platitude was, strangely, more respectful than if he'd said anything at all. We pulled into the parking garage of the hospital. It was cavernous, mostly empty, and smelled of bleach and cold, damp concrete. The fluorescent lights hummed, casting a sick, greenish glow on everything. "I'll come with you," he said. It wasn't a question. "She'll be scared," I said. "She doesn't trust men like you." "She'll be safer if she's scared," he replied. We walked through the automatic doors into the back entrance. The hallway was a tunnel of neon, the floor waxed to a mirror shine. It was almost 3 a.m. The only sound was the distant, rhythmic beep of a machine and the squeak of our wet shoes. We found my mother, Mara, in the subterranean linen supply room, sorting heavy canvas bags of surgical scrubs. She was a small woman, but her hands were strong, her face lined with a tiredness that went bone deep. She didn't hear us approach. "Mom," I said, loud enough for the vibration to catch her attention. She turned, Startled, and a small smile touched her face when she saw me. "Lena, honey, what are you doing here?" She looked at the wall clock. "It's the middle of the night." Then her eyes moved past me, to the man standing just behind me in the shadows of the hallway. Her smile vanished. Her hand went to her throat. She looked back at me, her eyes wide, and I knew she was reading the panic on my face. She reached up and pulled out her hearing aids, a habit she had when she was stressed. She said the buzzing of the lights gave her a headache. She was fully lip-reading now. "You're in trouble," she whispered, her voice rough from the late hour. "You're in trouble again, aren't you?" "Mom, we have to go. Right now. I'll explain. But we can't be here." Cassian stepped forward into the light. My mother flinched. He stopped instantly, keeping his distance. He didn't introduce himself with a title. He didn't try to charm her. He just inclined his head, a small, formal bow. "Ma'am, my name is Cassian." My mother's eyes darted between us. She saw the expensive suit. She saw the coiled, dangerous energy he couldn't hide. She saw the terror in my eyes. She didn't ask another question. She was a survivor, just like me. She untied her apron, her hands shaking slightly, and hung it on a hook. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely audible. She was looking at him, but speaking to me. "Thank you for bringing her." He nodded. "We should leave. Now." We moved fast, back through the neon tunnel, back toward the parking garage. My mom held my hand, her grip so tight her knuckles were white. We stepped out of the stairwell door into the garage. It was quieter than before. Too quiet. "Cassian," I whispered. "I know," he said. We were halfway to the sedan when it happened, a sharp pop, like a light bulb exploding, then another and another. The row of fluorescent lights directly above us fizzled, sparked, and died, plunging our section of the garage into near total darkness. "A trap," Cassian hissed. He didn't panic. He moved. "Get your mother in the car." A thud came from the darkness behind us. Not a footstep, a landing, like something heavy dropping from the ceiling, then another, landing on the roof of a parked van. "They're here," I said, my voice trembling. "Get in the car." Cassian shoved me and my mom toward the sedan, fumbling for the electronic key. Two shadows detached themselves from the darkness. Moving low and fast, they had dropped from the pipes on the ceiling, like spiders. One came at Cassian, the other one, seeing the weaker prey, veered toward me and my mom. Cassian didn't pull a gun. He shoved my mom into the back seat and spun, using the open passenger door as a shield. The first man, dressed in black, crashed into it with a sickening crack of bone. Cassian didn't pause. He slammed the heavy door again, striking the man's knee, then used his other hand to rip the side view mirror from its socket. He moved with a brutal, economic grace. The second man grabbed me, his hand tangling in my hair. I screamed, and he tried to clap a hand over my mouth. I still had my server's apron on under my jacket, a habit. My hand flew to the pocket and closed around the one thing I always carried, a heavy, all-metal pen mister. Davies had given me for my 1-year anniversary at the bistro. As the man yanked my head back, I drove the pen backward with all my weight into his wrist. He screamed, a high, thin sound of pure agony, and let go. He stumbled back, clutching his hand. He wasn't finished. He looked up, his eyes wild with rage in the dim emergency lighting. He wants you, mister. Corvus wants a public apology. He wants you kneeling." Corvus, the name hung in the cold, damp air, the head of the Gilded Crows, a ghost story, a man no one had ever seen. Cassian's fight was already over. The first man was on the ground, groaning, his leg bent at an unnatural angle. Cassian grabbed my attacker by the collar and threw him bodily against a concrete pillar. The man's head hit with a dull, heavy sound, and he slid to the ground. "Get in," Cassian ordered, his voice raw. I scrambled into the driver's seat. It was closer and slid over. He got in, and the engine roared to life. He slammed the car into reverse, the tires screaming on the concrete. As we sped away, my headlights flashed across something on the ground where the second man had fallen. A small, gold-colored card, glittering on the damp floor. It must have fallen when I stabbed his wrist. I didn't even think. As Cassian threw the car into drive, I opened the door, leaned out, and snatched it. "Lena, what are you—" I slammed the door shut. "He dropped this." We tore out of the garage, leaving the two men in the darkness. My heart felt like it was going to beat its way out of my chest. My mom was in the back, breathing fast, her eyes closed tight. "Are you okay?" I asked, turning to her. I'm fine, baby. Just drive." I looked at the thing in my hand. It was a plastic card, plated in fake gold. In the center was a black, stylized QR code. "Don't scan that," Cassian said, his voice hard. He glanced at it, his eyes flicking from the road to the card and back. "Why, it's evidence?" "It's bait. The moment you scan it, it pings your location. It's not a message, it's a tracker." He took a sharp right, then another. A series of turns that didn't make any sense. He was checking if we were being followed. "Where are we going?" I asked. My apartment was compromised. My mom couldn't go back to her place. "Somewhere safe," was all he said. He drove for 20 minutes, circling the city, finally heading toward the high-rises that overlooked the lake. He pulled into a private underground garage, one that opened with a signal from his car, and parked in a reserved spot. The building was one of the new, sterile glass towers that cost a fortune. He led us to an elevator, which opened directly into an apartment on one of the highest floors. He didn't use a key card. He pulled a single, old-fashioned, heavy brass key from his pocket and unlocked the deadbolt. The fact that he already had the key sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't a last-minute arrangement. This was a contingency. The apartment was huge and empty. It smelled like new carpet and paint. The furniture was all there, covered in white dust sheets. The only thing alive in the room was the view of floor-to-ceiling window that looked out over the dark, storm-tossed waters of Lakefall. In the distance, a foghorn wailed, a long, lonely sound. "Mom, are you all right?" I asked, guiding her to a covered sofa. I need a minute." "Bathroom," she murmured, and disappeared down a hallway. I was alone with him. The wind howled against the glass. "You had this place ready," I said. It wasn't a question. "The Rulfo Circle owns properties," he said, walking to the window. "This is one. It's secure. No one knows you're here." "I can't stay here," I said, rubbing my arms. "I can't just hide in your golden cage. I have to work. We need money." "You can't go back to Marisol and Maple." He turned from the window. "Brisk will be waiting. Corvus will be waiting. That was a test. The next team they send won't be so easy to stop." "So what do?" I demanded, the frustration and terror of the night boiling over. "What? You just keep me here. One of your contingencies." "I have a logistics company," he said, his voice perfectly level. "Rulfo Freight Works. It's clean, fully legitimate. We move cargo. I need someone in dispatch, handling data entry for the manifests." I stared at him. "A job?" "It's temporary, to keep you off the street, to keep you close, where I can be sure you're not going to be grabbed. It pays well, 3 times what the bistro paid." This was it. This was the hook, the price for his protection. I would be his employee, in his debt, on his payroll. I thought about my mom, shaking in the bathroom. I thought about the man screaming about Mr. Corvus. I thought about the golden crow on my kitchen table. "Okay," I said, my voice hoarse. "I'll take it." He nodded, as if the outcome had never been in doubt. "For the salary," I added, stepping toward him, "and on one condition." His eyes narrowed slightly. "What?" "I won't lie to my mother. She'll know where I'm working. She'll know it's for you. I don't keep secrets from her. She has to be safe, but she won't be a prisoner." He studied me for a long moment, the silence stretching out, filled only by the wail of the wind. He was measuring my loyalty, my stubbornness. "Agreed," he said. "Get some rest, both of you. We start tomorrow." I slept for 3 hours in a strange bed, fully clothed, while my mother slept in the other room of Cassian Rulfo's sterile, high-rise safe house. When I woke, the storm had passed, leaving Lakefall looking scoured and raw. A black car was waiting for me downstairs at 7 a.m. sharp. Rulfo Freight Works wasn't in a gleaming tower. It was a sprawling complex of massive, windowless warehouses down by the rail yard, surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with razor wire. The air smelled of diesel, cold steel, and cardboard. It was a world away from the bistro's scent of roasted coffee and old wine. Inside, the office was a hive of activity. It was clean, brutally efficient, and bright. My new life began at a terminal in a gray cubicle. My new vocabulary was a list of codes: cold store for pharmaceuticals, dry store for electronics, and then there was the restricted zone, a section of the warehouse floor marked with a thick red line, where, I was told, high-value government contracts were stored. My new hire paperwork warned that crossing it without authorization was grounds for immediate termination. I was being trained by a woman named Ivy Tran. She was maybe a year or two older than me, with sharp eyes and a way of talking so fast I had to struggle to keep up. She was showing me how to log manifests, how to match shipping codes to client accounts. "So, you're Cassian's new project," she said, not looking up from her screen as she approved a shipment. "I'm a data entry temp," I said, my defenses rising. "Right." She finally turned, her chair squeaking. She pushed her glasses up her nose. "Just a word of advice. Lena, keep your head down. This place is clean, but the world outside it isn't. The Gilded Crows tried to plant someone in here last year. Infiltrate. It didn't end well for him." My blood chilled. What happened? Let's just say his employment was terminated. Permanently. She went back to her screen. "Just log the manifests. Don't get curious." But it was too late. I was curious. Cashin himself gave me my system access. It was limited. I was locked out of financial accounts, out of the restricted zone's inventory. "Just the manifests," he said. "That's all you need." It felt like a test. I spent the morning learning the system. It was complex, but it was just like balancing orders at the bistro, only on a massive scale. You match what goes out with what comes in. By 11 a.m., I found the anomaly. It wasn't in the restricted zone. It was hidden in the dry store manifests. Most shipments had a client code, a destination, and a delivery confirmation signature, but there was a repeating pattern. Once every few days, a shipment of high-value electronics would be logged with a destination code I didn't recognize, blind station. There was no client, no address, no signature. The cargo just vanished from the system. It was a digital black hole. This was it. This was the gray area. The part of his clean business that wasn't clean at all. This was the source of the power that had saved me. I felt a strange, cold disappointment. At lunch, the main cafeteria was too loud, too bright. I took my sandwich and my container of coffee up to the roof. It was a vast, flat expanse of gravel, overlooking the rail yards. The wind was high, but the sun was bright. I wasn't alone for long. The heavy fire door scraped open, and Cassian stepped out. He'd taken off his suit jacket, and in just his white shirt and gray vest, he looked less like a phantom and more like a man. But the aura was still there, that absolute, dangerous stillness. He walked over and stood beside me, not too close, just looking out at the city. "You learn fast," he said. "It's just numbers," I replied, not looking at him. "Numbers and codes." "How's your mother?" "Scared, but she's tougher than she looks. She's not happy about me working for you. Are you—" I turned to face him then. The wind whipped my hair across my face, and I had to push it back. "I'm grateful for the paycheck. I'm grateful my mother is safe." "That's not what I asked." He looked at me, his gray eyes unblinking, seeming to absorb the bright sunlight. "Are you still afraid of me, Lena?" I thought about the man in the bistro, the man in the cafe, the man who had a key to an empty apartment. I thought about blind station. I should have been terrified. But the adrenaline of the past 24 hours had burned something away. "I am," I said, and the honesty of it surprised me. I looked away, back at the skyline. I'm afraid that I'm not. I could feel his gaze on me, steady, intense. He was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. "Ivy's right, you know? You should keep your head down." "I don't know how," I whispered. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a new text, an unknown number, the same one from my apartment. My heart hammered. I pulled it out. It wasn't just a text, it was a link. "Don't," Cassian said, his voice suddenly hard. But I had already clicked it. It opened to a video streaming site I didn't recognize. The logo was a stylized golden crow. Crowline. The video was from the bistro, but it was wrong. It was edited, chopped. It showed me approaching the table. It showed me angry. It cut out Kellen Brisk grabbing my wrist. It cut out his slurred insults. It just showed him leaning in, smiling, and then me. My face twisted in rage, slapping him. They'd added their own audio, a distorted, mocking slap sound. It made me look like the monster. It made him look like the victim. Below the video, the text was simple. "The server who attacks customers. The Gilded Crows believe in business integrity. This girl, Lena Quill, has 24 hours to issue a public, kneeling apology on a live stream, or the harbor will deliver its own." My blood turned to ice. They used my name. "They're painting a target on me," I whispered. Cassian took the phone from my hand. His face, usually so calm, was a mask of cold, controlled fury. "My team will handle this," he said, his voice flat and deadly. "I'll have this site scrubbed from the internet. I'll find the server. I'll find them." "No." The word was out of my mouth before I'd even thought it. He looked at me, incredulous. "No. That's fighting shadows with shadows. That's what they want." I took my phone back, my hand shaking, but my voice was firm. "They put my face out there. They put my name out there. I'm not going to let your ghosts fight my battles. They want to use a video, fine. We'll use a video." I looked at him, my resolve hardening. "You fight lies with the truth." He didn't argue. He just studied my face, then gave a single, sharp nod. "We did it right there, in the warehouse." He held his phone, the camera steady. I stood in front of a pallet of dry store goods, the sounds of forklifts in the background. I was just a worker on our lunch break. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just talked. "My name is Lena Quill. Last night, a man named Kellen Brisk put his hands on me. He grabbed my wrist and he wouldn't let go. I defended myself. Now he and the Gilded Crows are demanding I apologize." I looked right into the lens, right at Cassian. "I will not apologize for defending myself. I will not apologize for having boundaries. To every woman in this city, every server, every bartender, every nurse, you have the right to do your job without being touched." I paused, and the idea came to me. "Put your hands on your work, not on us. Hands off, Lake Fall." I nodded. Cassian stopped recording. He didn't say a word. He just sent the file to Ivy. "Push this," he said. "Every platform." Within an hour, it was trending. My face was everywhere, but this time, it was my words. Hands off, Lake Fall was a hashtag. Other servers were sharing it, then nurses, then office workers. It was an explosion. The blowback came fast, and not just from the shadows. An email arrived in my new company inbox. It was from a Detective Miller at the Metropolitan Anti-Corruption Office, MACO. "Miss Quill, we saw your video. We find your courage commendable. We are conducting a sensitive investigation into the organization you mentioned. We would like to speak with you, off the record. Please come to our downtown office, alone." I showed it to Cassian. His reaction was instant and absolute. "No." "They're the police. Cassian, they're investigating the Crows. They're MACO. They're politicians with badges. They're compromised, or they're incompetent. You don't walk in there. Not alone. You'll be a pawn in their game." "It's my game," I shot back, the adrenaline of the day making me reckless. "I started this with the slap. I continued it with the video. I am going to talk to them, and you are going to stay out of it." He looked like he was going to argue, his jaw tightening, but he didn't. He just stared at me. his silence a heavy, disapproving weight. Before he could speak, his desk phone buzzed. He answered it, his eyes still locked on me. Yes, what, how many, let them in. He hung up. The UPC is here. The clean streets, guys. They're here for a random inspection. They're here because of your video. They're the Crow's pocket police. 2 officers in the UPC's crisp gray uniforms were already walking onto the floor. The man in the lead was tall, with a face that looked like it had been carved from cold stone. He wasn't wearing a name tag, and his eyes, they were dark, quick, and predatory. Crow's eyes. Mr. Rolfo, the officer said, his voice oily. We've had an anonymous tip about irregularities in your manifests. We're here to inspect your restricted zone. This was it, the shakedown. Cassian smiled. It was a terrifying, humorless expression. Of course, officer, we have nothing to hide. Full cooperation, be my guest. He personally walked them to the red line. He punched in a code. The heavy gate rolled open. My logs are your logs, he said. The officers stalked into the zone. We watched from the office. They spent 30 minutes. They tore open 3 crates. They found exactly what the manifests said. Sealed boxes of advanced medical scanners, government property. The lead officer came out, his face dark with frustration. He had nothing. Satisfied, Officer Cassian asked, his voice pleasant. The officer just glared at me, a look so full of venom it made me take a step back. For now, he sneered, and they left. The warehouse was quiet after they were gone. The tension was so thick I could barely breathe. And they'll be back, I said. Not here, Cassian said, looking at the gate. They were sending a message. Now I'll send one. But the Crows didn't wait. That night, I was working late, trying to trace the blind station shipments. Ivy was in the next office, balancing accounts. It was almost 9 o'clock at night. The smell hit me first. Acrid, not diesel, not cardboard, smoke. Then the alarm, a high, piercing wail. Fire, someone yelled from the warehouse floor. I ran out of my office. Smoke, thick and black, was pouring from the ventilation shaft connected to Warehouse B. Ivy, I screamed, running to her cubicle. She was just standing there, frozen, staring at the smoke. Ivy, we have to go now. I grabbed her arm and pulled. We ran for the emergency exit, joining a small stream of other night shift workers. The smoke was getting thicker, burning my lungs. We burst out into the cold night air. The fire trucks were already screaming in the distance. Are you okay? I gasped, coughing. Yeah, I think so. Ivy was pale, staring at the smoke. As I was trying to catch my breath, I saw him, a figure in dark clothes, his face hidden by a black hoodie. He wasn't running out of the building. He was running away from the main exit, toward a side door in the shadows. He'd come from the direction of Warehouse B. The arsonist. Hey, I yelled, without thinking. The exit's this way. He froze, saw me, and started to sprint. I ran to cut him off. It was stupid. It was pure instinct. I grabbed his arm. Stop. He was strong. He shoved me back, hard, sending me stumbling into a stack of empty pallets. My hand, which had gripped his sleeve, felt wet. He was gone, vanishing into the rail yard's darkness. I was coughing, my heart pounding. I looked down at my hand. It was smeared with something thick and wet. I brought it to my nose. The sharp chemical smell of aerosol. It was paint, bright, garish, golden yellow paint. A car screeched to a halt on the asphalt, its headlights pinning me. Cassian. He was out of the car before the engine was even off, his face a mask of thunder. He bypassed the firefighters, his eyes scanning, finding me instantly. He saw me shaking. He saw Ivy, pale and coughing. He saw the yellow paint on my hand. He didn't say, "Are you okay?" He didn't ask what happened. He strode right up to me, and in one smooth motion, took off his heavy wool suit jacket, the same ash gray one. He draped it over my shoulders. It was heavy, and it smelled like him cold air, expensive soap, and that faint metallic tang. It was an anchor in the chaos. The firefighters were yelling. The sirens were wailing. The first flames were just starting to lick the roof of Warehouse B. Cassian didn't say a word. He just put his hand on my shoulder, his grip firm, and looked at me. I looked back. It was longer than just a glance. It was a transfer. And he was furious, but his fury was a shield. I was terrified, but my terror was hardening into resolve. He wasn't my boss. He wasn't my savior. He was something else. The look held, a silent, binding contract in the middle of the flashing red and blue lights. He knew I'd seen the arsonist, and I knew he would find him. I went to the Mako building. Cassian insisted on driving me. His silence a heavy, disapproving blanket. He waited outside, a shadow in his black sedan, while I walked into the sterile, government-gray lobby. I was tired of being a pawn, tired of being the target, the fire at the warehouse. The acrid smell of that yellow paint on my hand had burned away the last of my fear. All I had left was a cold, hard resolve. Detective Miller wasn't a grizzled cop. He was young, ambitious, and wore a suit that was trying too hard. He sat me down in a windowless room. "Miss Quill, thank you for coming in," he started, all professional courtesy. "Your video, Hands Off Lakefall, has caused quite a stir. It's given us a new angle of political pressure." He didn't waste time. He laid out a series of glossy 8x10 photos on the metal table. "We're not just investigating the Gilded Crows," he said, tapping a photo of Kellen Brisk. "We're investigating their patrons. The crows are just the muscle. The money, Miss Quill, flows from here." He slid a new file into the center of the table. A corporate headshot, a man in his late 40s, smiling, philanthropic, with cold, empty eyes. "Joel Dre," Miller said, "CEO of the Urbian Heritage Fund." The name meant nothing to me. "Urbian is one of the biggest private equity funds in the city," Miller continued. "They're the primary and only donor to a little charity you might have heard of, the Harbor Halo Foundation." My blood went cold. "The Crow's laundry machine," and I whispered, repeating Cassian's words. "Exactly. Dre is Corvus. Corvus is the boogeyman he invented to keep his billion-dollar reputation clean, while his crows shake down the entire wharf. The Urbian Fund pays Halo. Halo pays the crows for security services. A perfect legal circle." I stared at the smiling face of Joel Dre, the man who had ordered me to kneel. "So arrest him," I said. "No, we can't," Miller said, leaning back. "The money is clean. We need something else. We need to tie Dre directly to the Crow's criminal activity." He paused, his eyes narrowing. "Which brings us to your new employer, Mr. Cassian Rulfo." My defenses shot up. "What about him?" "Rulfo is old school. He's not flashy like Dre, but he's not clean. We know he's moving unregulated goods, and we know Dre has been squeezing him. The fire at your warehouse, that wasn't just a warning to you, Miss Quill. It was a message to Rulfo. Dre is hostile takeover level." He leaned forward, his voice dropping. "We need someone on the inside. We know Rulfo runs a ghost log. We've heard whispers, blind station. We need those shipping manifests. We need proof that Dre is actively disrupting Rulfo's network, which gives us the leverage we need to move on him." I finally saw it. The whole ugly picture. They didn't care about my slap. They didn't care about the fire. They were pulling me in to be their mole, a data entry clerk who could hand them Cassian's head on a platter, all in the hopes that they could maybe catch a bigger fish. I was the bait. I stood up. "Thank you for your time, Detective." "Miss Quill," he said, his voice hardening, "if you're not with us, you're obstructing a federal investigation." "I'm a waitress who got a new job," I said, walking out the door. I got back into Cassian's sedan. The silence was absolute. He just drove, heading back toward the warehouse, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "They want blind station," I said to the windshield. The car didn't swerve. He just kept driving. "I need to tell you something," he said finally, his voice low and tight. "You deserve the truth, all of it." He didn't look at me. He just talked. "Joel Dre Corvus and I, we came up in the same world. We weren't friends, but we had an arrangement years ago. I handled the logistics, the freight. He handled the security on the wharf. It was a balance. I kept my side of the water clean. He kept his... But he got greedy. He started Harbor Halo. His crows got more violent. He was attracting the kind of attention I avoid. I cut ties. Pulled out completely almost 2 years ago. My heart sank. But Blind Station... It's the last thread, he admitted, his voice raw with a frustration I'd never heard from him. The last gray route I kept open. A pressure valve. A line of communication I couldn't afford to close. Now Dre wants it all back. He thinks my organization is weak. He's using you to prove it. He's trying to drag me back into his filth by attacking you. He was confessing, admitting that the clean job he gave me was built on a foundation that was still dirty. Mako wants me to be their mole, I said, my voice flat. They want your logs. I'll handle Mako, he said, a deadly promise in his voice. No. I looked at him, at his hard profile. I'll handle Mako, but on one condition. He waited, his jaw tight. You cut the thread, you shut down Blind Station. For good. You go 100% clean. The way you told me your business was? He stared at the road. I could almost hear the calculations whirring in his head. That route was his leverage, his last tie to the underworld he claimed to be above. To cut it, that was a kind of death. He finally looked at me, his gray eyes clear. Done. Then I won't give Mako the logs, I said. We'll give them something better. We'll give them Dre. We didn't go home. We went to the warehouse, to his private, soundproofed office. Ivy was already there, her face pale from the fire, but her eyes bright. We laid out the plan. We can't just shut Blind Station down, I said, the plan forming in my head. Dre will know. He'll just escalate. We have to use it. Operation Bright Door, Cassian said, a name for the mission already on his lips. We log a dummy shipment, high-value electronics. We put a tracker inside, log it for Blind Station tonight. Dre's people are watching the logs, especially after the fire, Ivy added, her fingers already flying across a keyboard, pulling up schematics. They'll see the shipment moving, they'll intercept it, they'll want the cargo, and they'll want the driver. She took a deep breath. I'll drive. I know the routes, I know the protocols. They'll be expecting a regular driver, not... She looked at me. Not the new girl. Absolutely not, Ivy, Cassian said, his voice final. It's too dangerous. They saw you at the fire. They know your face. He turned to one of his shadow guards by the door. Get Mateo. No, I said. The room went silent. Everyone looked at me. They won't be expecting Mateo either, I said, my voice shaking but firm. They'll be expecting the person they're trying to break, the person they ordered to apologize on a live stream. I looked directly at Cassian. This whole thing started with me. It ends with me. They want me. They can have me. I'll drive. Lena, I will not let you, Cassian said, his voice a low growl. You're not letting me, I shot back. I'm doing it. It's the only way they'll believe the bait is real. They're arrogant. They think I'm just a terrified waitress. They'll come for me, and they'll take the crate. He stared at me, a silent, furious battle happening behind his eyes. He knew I was right. Fine, he bit out. But you will not be alone. My team will be on you every foot of the way. 3 cars, front, back, and parallel. You will have an earpiece. The second it goes wrong, I'm pulling you out. 2 hours later, I was behind the wheel of a plain. Dark blue Rulfo Freightworks van. In the back, a single crate held $10,000 worth of dummy electronics and 1 military-grade GPS tracker. My hands were sweating, gripping the wheel. Comms check, Lena. Ivy's voice crackled in my ear. I'm in your system. I see you. The tracker is live. Cassian is 2 cars back, she added. He's not happy. Try not to scratch his van. I pulled out onto the dark highway. The city lights faded, replaced by the blackness of the industrial parks. It was quiet. Too quiet. Hold on, Ivy said, her voice tight. I'm picking up a signal. Above you. It's not a car. My stomach clenched. What is it? A drone, a mini. It's tagging you, matching your speed. They're watching. They're watching, I whispered back. It's running a commercial frequency. Sloppy, Ivy muttered. Okay, just keep driving. I'm sending it a new home location. A nice patch of water in the middle of the lake. Got it. Signal is diverting. It thinks you're on a boat. The earpiece crackled. A new voice. Cassian. They're diverting you. His voice was gravelly and tight with tension. They're not waiting for the drop. They want you now. Your GPS is being fed a new route. Take the next exit. The exit led to a chain-link fence, a broken gate, and a road that hadn't been paved in years. At the end of it, a derelict church stood, its steeple a black spike against the night sky. Lena, this is a trap, Cassian said. Eris, it was always a trap, I replied, but the tracker's in the crate. We just need them to take the bait. I parked the van, killed the engine. The silence was absolute. I'm going in. I pushed open the heavy wooden doors. The inside smelled of mold, dried leaves, and rust. Moonlight streamed through a huge, broken stained glass window, illuminating a ruined altar. He was there, Kellen Brisk, looking impossibly smug. He wasn't alone. 3 large men in dark tactical gear crows fanned out in the shadows, and one of them was holding a high-end video camera. Lena, Brisk said, clapping his hands slowly, the sound echoing in the vast, empty space. You just don't learn. We gave you the easy way. 24 hours. Now, you get the hard way. He gestured to the cameraman. We're live on Crowline in 30 seconds. Mister, Corvus is watching. He wants to see you apologize. On your knees. Right here. He pointed to the dirty, pigeon-stained floor. I felt the cold, hard metal of my phone in my pocket. I thought of the hands-off Lakefall video. I thought of the lies. You want a live stream, I said? I pulled out my phone. My fingers were fast. I opened my own social feed. I hit Go Live. The little red light came on. I'm not apologizing, I said, my voice echoing in the huge, empty space. I held the phone up, capturing Brisk's stunned face, the cameraman, the crows. My name is Lena Quill. This is Kellen Brisk, of the Gilded Crows. He's in an abandoned church trying to force me to kneel for a camera. This is what they do. This is the integrity they talk about. Brisk's face went from smug to purple with rage. What are you doing? Get that phone, cut the power now. The crows lunged. At the same instant, the entire church was plunged into total, suffocating darkness. They must have cut the main breaker outside. I heard a scuffle, a grunt. Someone grabbed for my phone. Suddenly, a beam of light, brighter than a headlight, sliced through the darkness. It hit the cameraman right in the eyes, making him scream. Get the package, Brisk shrieked, his voice cracking. Another beam of light hit one of the crows. It was Cassian. He was here. He wasn't shooting. He was using a heavy tactical flashlight as a weapon, the strobe effect blinding and disorienting them. Lena, down, his voice commanded, low and calm in the chaos. I dropped to the floor. I heard a grunt, the sound of a heavy body hitting a wooden pew. Cassian moved like a ghost. He was just presence and force. Get the crate, forget her, Brisk yelled, pure panic in his voice. The crows were confused, blinded. They scrambled back toward the van. I heard the van doors being yanked open, the crate being dragged out. Police don't move, a voice yelled from outside. The sound of sirens, suddenly very close. Mako. The crows panicked. The cameraman, clutching his camera and the dummy crate, ran for a back exit. The other crows scattered into the darkness. They're getting away, I yelled, scrambling to my feet. Cassian grabbed my arm, pulling me up. Let them... Detective Miller and 2 Mako agents burst in, guns drawn, seconds too late. They secured the empty church. They got the crate, Miller said, slamming his fist on a pew. They took the bait. We'll have them in an hour. He got away, I said, breathing hard. The cameraman, he took the crate and his camera. It's fine, Ivy's voice chirped in my ear, bright and triumphant. The tracker in the crate was a decoy. It's already dead. The real tracker, I sewed it into the strap of the cameraman's bag while you were prepping the van. He's leading us right to their studio, right to Crowline. I almost laughed from the sheer giddy relief. Cassian was standing in the moonlight, checking his hands, No blood. He had kept his word. He looked at me, and the relief in his eyes was so profound it almost knocked me over. He walked over, his voice low, just for me. "You turned a trap into a countermove," he said. I was still high on adrenaline, my heart still racing from the fight and the victory. I looked up at him, at this impossible, dangerous, and strangely honorable man. "Don't call me I said, my voice breathless. He looked confused. "Call you what?" You called me I stammered, realizing he hadn't said it at all. It was just the low, intimate rumble of his voice. My mind had filled in a familiarity that wasn't there. I felt my face flush. "Just don't." A slow understanding dawned on his face. He realized I was reacting to an intimacy I wasn't ready for, one that he hadn't even offered. A small, very faint, very real smile touched the corner of his mouth. "Okay, Lena." I smiled back, just a little, embarrassed. We both laughed, a short, quiet burst of air in the ruined, wholly dark. We didn't talk in the car on the way back from the church. Mako was swarming the place, their flashing blue and red lights painting the stained glass, their voices loud and triumphant as they talked about their win. Cassian just drove, his face a hard mask in the dashboard lights, the high-octane adrenaline from the fight, the panic, the victory, and that absurd, shared laugh in the darkness was beginning to drain away. It left a low, vibrating hum under my skin, like I'd been holding onto a live wire. He unlocked the heavy, brass-keyed door to the high-rise safe house. It was almost 3 a.m. My mom was asleep in the back bedroom. A note left on the kitchen counter. 8. Don't wake me. Love you. The apartment was silent, but the world outside was roaring. The storm had returned with a vengeance. Rain lashed the floor-to-ceiling windows, a furious, driving sheet of water that blurred the lights of Lakefall into a shattered, glittering mosaic. We were in a glass tower, suspended above the chaos, and it felt like the wind was trying to tear us from our perch. I was shaking. It wasn't from cold. It was the adrenaline crash, a deep, cellular tremor. I went to the kitchen, my hands unsteady as I poured a glass of water from the tap. I drank it in 3 gulps. He was just standing by the window. His back was to me, his hands in his pockets, watching the storm. He hadn't taken his jacket off. He was absolutely still. But it wasn't a peaceful stillness. It was the stillness of a spring coiled so tight it hummed. He was vibrating, too, running on his own controlled, kenneled tension. "They took the bait," I said. My voice sounded too loud, too raw in the quiet, empty room. He turned, his face half in shadow. "They took the bait you set, and Ivy's tracker is the one that matters." He walked over to the dining table, where we'd left the city maps and plans scattered hours ago. But I made a mistake. I blinked, surprised. "What?" "The drone," he said. His voice was clipped, angry at himself. I anticipated them intercepting the van. I anticipated a physical trap. I did not anticipate aerial surveillance. That was sloppy. It put you at risk seconds before Ivy even spotted it. I walked over, drawn by the admission. I looked down at the map, at the route I'd driven, now marked in red ink. It seemed like a relic from another life. "Ivy handled it," I said, my voice softer. "It worked." I put my hand down on the map, my fingers tracing the winding road to the abandoned church. "We were here," I murmured, and they were. He moved at the same instant, his own hand landing on the map to show me where his chase car had been. Our fingers brushed. Just the tips. His index finger against my ring finger. It wasn't a grab, like Kellen Brisk's. It wasn't a touch, like my mother's. It was a spark. A tiny, blue-white jolt of static electricity. So real I almost gasped. It was like the whole night, all the fear and all the adrenaline, had condensed into that one single point of contact. I snatched my hand back like I'd been burned. He froze, his hand still on the map. The air in the room changed. It thickened. The sound of the rain, the howling wind, it all just faded. The only sound I could hear was the sudden, heavy, panicked thump of my own heart against my ribs. We just stood there, on opposite sides of the table, the map between us. He didn't move. He just watched me. His gray eyes, usually so flat and controlled, were dark now, and they were searching mine, looking for something, an answer to a question he hadn't asked. "Lena," he said. His voice was a low rumble, barely louder than the storm. He didn't move, but the question was in his gaze. "If I move closer, will you want me to stop?" The question hung in the air, so clear, so direct, it floored me. No games, no assumptions, no mafia boss taking what he wanted. He was a man, standing in a room, asking for permission. He was giving me all the power. My heart was in my throat. I was terrified. But as I looked at him, I realized with a sudden, shocking clarity that I wasn't afraid of him. I was afraid of this feeling. "No," I said. My voice was a shaky whisper, but I met his gaze. "I won't want you to stop." I took a ragged breath. "But don't impose. Don't decide for me." He held my gaze. I expected him to step forward, to take my answer as an invitation. He didn't. He took a small, almost imperceptible step back. He was giving me the space I just demanded. He was proving he'd heard me. And then, slowly, he took one step forward, returning to where he'd been, his eyes never leaving mine. It was a silent question. "Your move." He'd given me the choice. Now I had to make it. The space between us was only a few feet, but it felt like a canyon. I was the one who crossed it. I took one step, then another. My hand, the one that had slapped Kellen Brisk, the one that had held the pen in the parking garage, felt impossibly heavy. I raised it, slowly, watching his eyes. He didn't move. He didn't even blink. He just waited. I touched his face. My fingers, still trembling slightly, grazed the rough stubble on his jaw. It was real. I moved them up, tracing the hard, sharp plane of his cheekbone. He was warm, so incredibly warm. He closed his eyes, just for a second, at the contact. "Come here," I whispered. He moved then, slowly, as if through water, giving me every possible chance to pull away. When his lips met mine, it wasn't a collision. It wasn't a demand. It was a landing. It was slow and careful, and so incredibly warm. It tasted like the coffee he must have had hours ago and the cold night air. It was a question. All over again. I answered it. I leaned into him, just an inch. But it was everything. My hands moved from his face to the lapels of his vest, gripping the rough, expensive wool. It was an anchor. I needed an anchor. His hands came up, but they didn't grab me. They didn't go to my waist or my hair. They rested gently, respectfully on my upper back, his thumbs just below my shoulder blades. He wasn't pulling me closer. He was just holding me, supporting me. He was letting me control this. We broke apart, but only by a fraction. We were breathing the same air. I let out a shaky breath, a sound that was almost a laugh. "I'm terrified," I admitted, my forehead resting against his. A small, rough sound rumbled in his chest. He was laughing, too, a quiet huff of air. "So am I," he confessed. His heart was hammering against his ribs. I could feel it, even through his vest, a wild, frantic rhythm that matched my own, the most powerful, dangerous, and controlled man in Lakefall was afraid to kiss me. The rain was the only music in the room, a steady, rhythmic drumming against the glass wall. The lights were dim, just the blurred glow of the city far below. I didn't want to move, but I didn't want to just stand in the middle of his empty dining room. I kept one hand on his vest, a grip I wasn't ready to release. "Come on," I said, tugging him gently. I led him across the dark room to the sofa, the one still half covered in a white dust sheet. We sat, not close, but not far. I tucked my feet up under me, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline was finally, truly gone, leaving that deep, humming warmth. "You shouldn't have cut the line," he said. His voice was soft. He was talking about Blind Station. He was talking about business, because it was safer. "You shouldn't have had a line to cut," I countered, just as softly. He was quiet for a moment. "You're right." We sat in the near dark. We talked, not about the crows or Mako or the fire. We talked about the things we'd avoided. I told him about Ricky, my brother, not just the trouble he got in, but how he used to build model airplanes that actually flew. He told me about growing up in the freight yards, how he learned to read from old shipping manifests, a world of coded destinations. We talked in low voices, the rain and the darkness our cover. My hand was resting on the sofa cushion between us, palm up. His hand, the one that had been on the map, moved slowly. It covered mine. It was large and warm and slightly rough from calluses I hadn't expected. His touch was a question. I turned my hand over, my palm meeting his, my fingers laced with his. This was my answer. He leaned in, and I met him halfway. This kiss was different. It was deeper, surer. There was no hesitation this time. His other hand came up, cupping my jaw, his thumb tracing my cheekbone, sending shivers down my spine. My free hand went to his chest, right over his heart, feeling its steady, heavy beat. We shifted, leaning back against the arm of the sofa, his arm a strong, solid weight around me. The warmth spread from my chest, down to my fingers, to my toes. It was a slow, rising tide, a feeling of safety that I hadn't realized I'd been missing for years. There was no rush, there was no demand, there was no part of me that was scared. It was just trust, a quiet, terrifying, and absolute trust. We stayed like that for a long time, the silence filled only by the sound of the rain and our breathing, which had finally synced. He pulled back, just enough to look at me in the dim, watery light. His hand was still laced with mine. He squeezed it, once. A single, firm press. It wasn't just a touch, it was a promise. After a while, I don't know how long, we stood up. The storm had passed its peak, softening to a steady, heavy drizzle. The city lights were clearer now. We walked to the massive window, side by side, our shoulders almost brushing. I leaned my head against the cool glass. He stood beside me, a solid, warm presence. "The tracker's live," I said, my voice quiet, thinking of Ivy, of what came next. Tomorrow, Mako will want to move. Dre will be desperate. "Tomorrow is tomorrow," he said. I turned from the window to face him. He was so close. I leaned in, resting my forehead against his. His skin was warm. I closed my eyes, just breathing him in. "Tomorrow," I whispered, "we're still us. This doesn't change the fight. It doesn't mean we're—" I felt his breath on my cheek. "Yes," he said, his voice a low, rough vow that vibrated through me. "We're still us." He paused. "And we're stronger. We didn't sleep." The intimacy of the night before, the warmth and the quiet promises, felt like a lifetime ago. It was replaced by a cold, sharp energy, the hum of the city waking up in the digital beep of a tracker. Ivy had set up a command center on the safe house's massive dining table. Laptops, tablets, and a portable routing station were spread across the polished wood. My mother, bless her, just made us coffee, her face a mask of worry. But she didn't ask questions. She just kept our mugs full. "Got him," Ivy said, her voice sharp at 5 a.m. The tracker, the one she'd sewn into the cameraman's strap, wasn't pinging from a warehouse. It wasn't in the industrial district. "He's downtown," Ivy said, zooming in on the map projected against the wall. "The tech corridor, a building called the Airy." I pulled it up on my phone. The Airy wasn't a squat, concrete bunker. It was a sleek, glass and steel new build. Their website was all buzzwords, AI-driven narrative solutions, content optimization, proactive digital storytelling. It was a high-end, venture-funded tech startup. "Crowline," I whispered, staring at the smiling stock photos of their team. It's a front, a perfect, legitimate AI startup front. He's laundering his narrative, not just his money. Cassian said he was standing by the window, where we'd stood hours before. The storm was gone, but he looked like he was still in it. His left hand arrived as the sun was rising. Matteo Rione. He was the opposite of Cassian. Cassian was a coiled spring, a predator's stillness. Mateo was all quiet observation, an organizer, the man who saw the moving parts. He didn't look like a bodyguard. He looked like an overworked project manager. He was carrying a slim briefcase. "The UPC files," he said, handing Cassian a drive. "It's worse than we thought." Cassian plugged it into the main laptop. My stomach turned. It was a leaked budget proposal. Line items, allocations, authorizations. The money trail was sickeningly clear. The Urban Heritage Fund, Joel Dre's company, had made a massive civic donation to the Urban Public Safety Committee. That donation was earmarked, every single dollar, for the Clean Streets Initiative, and the Clean Streets budget, in turn, had a massive expenditure line for private security consultation and community monitoring. "The Gilded Crows," I said. "He's using city money, taxpayer money, to pay his own thugs to shake down the wharf." "The UPC aren't just compromised," Cassian said, his voice a low, deadly monotone. "They're his private army." "What about Mako?" I asked, thinking of Miller. "They're supposed to be investigating this. They're anti-corruption." "They're paralyzed," Mateo said, his voice quiet. "They suspect the UPC is dirty from the top down. They can't move without tipping Dre off. They're trying to build a perfect, airtight case. They're waiting for a smoking gun." The trap at the church snapped into focus. "That's what I was," I said. "They didn't just want a witness. They wanted a mole. They wanted your blind station logs to prove Dre was at war with you. They were trying to use your organization to clean up their own house." I looked at Cassian. The cold resolve I'd felt at the Mako office hardened into something new. "We can't just give this to Miller. We can't hand him the Airy. They'll just cut a deal. They'll seize the data, bury the UPC connection, and Dre will walk. They'll edit the tape to fit their own narrative." "What are you proposing?" Cassian asked. His eyes were fixed on me, the gray irises gauging my resolve. "The church," I said, my heart starting to pound. "My live stream. It worked. It got hands off. Lakefall trending. It worked because the public saw it. We do it again. When we hit the Airy, we don't just hand the data to Mako. We stream it. We put the UPC budget, the Harbor Halo accounts. All of it, we put it online for the whole city to see. A parallel feed. We make every citizen in Lakefall a witness." Cassian looked at me for a long, heavy moment. "Going public is a double-edged sword. Lena, you can't control it. Dre is a master of narrative. He'll twist it." "He can't twist a live feed," I countered, my voice fierce. "Public means no one can edit the tape after the fact. It's the only way they can't make me the criminal again." "Hold on," Ivy said, her eyes glued to her screen. Her fingers were a blur. "I've got something the Ares servers. The AI rendering, it's too much for one building. They're outsourcing their processing, routing their main storage." She brought up a new map on the wall, Crescent Wharf. "Oh, God," she whispered. "They're routing all backups to Warehouse 7C. I looked at Cassian. That was Blind Station, wasn't it?" His face was stone. "It was the physical hub, the one I cut loose." "They never left," I realized. "They just went silent. The Airy is the glossy storefront. 7C is the factory. That's where they make the smear videos. That's the real Crow line." The room was silent. The whole intricate, terrifying puzzle was finally laid out. Cassian turned to Mateo. "Take your team. I want Warehouse 7C. I want the hardware. No blood, no sirens until you're already inside. Go." Mateo nodded once and was gone. "What about us?" I asked, turning to Cassian. "We wait." "We wait," he confirmed. "We let Mateo secure the servers. Then we give the location of the Airy to Miller." "No," I shook my head. The plan solidifying in my mind. Dre is arrogant. His office is a fortress of lawyers and AI tech. He's not expecting a frontal assault from us. He's expecting Mako, but he's not expecting me. I looked at Ivy, the Airy, their website, their hiring. Ivy's eyes widened as she understood. Content moderators, junior video editors. "Oh, Lena, you're not serious." "They'll let us walk right in the front door," I said, my voice gaining strength. "While Mateo hits the factory, we hit the head office. We can get inside, plant a beacon, Copy their local files. By the time they realize 7C is compromised, we'll already be inside the brain." "Lena, I will not allow it," Cashin said, his voice final. "It's the only way," I argued. "If we wait, they'll know 7C is hit. They'll wipe the area clean. We have to move at the same time." As if summoned, Cashin's phone buzzed. He looked at the caller ID. Miller. He put it on speaker, his face grim. Mr. Rolfo." Miller's voice was crisp, proud. "Just wanted to let you know, our tracker just went active at a place called the Airy. We're filing for a warrant right now. We'll have it signed within a few hours. We're planning to move in by 5 p.m. We've got him." Cassian looked at me, his eyes dead. He hung up the phone without replying. "A few hours," he said, his voice flat. "By the time they sign that warrant, the new smear video of you will be finished. Those servers will be ashes, and Joel Dre will be on a plane to a country that doesn't extradite." He looked at me. The decision was made. "My mother," I said. "She's at the deep safe house, the one upstate." "She's fine," he said. "She's been there since last night." He nodded. "All business. Ivy. Lena, you're applying for a job." 2 hours later, my heart was a hummingbird in my chest. I was wearing the nicest blouse I owned, my hair pulled back. Ivy, next to me, looked like a perfectly nervous, brilliant tech applicant, a tablet clutched to her chest. The lobby of the Airy was all glass, pale wood, and quiet. Smiling receptionists. It smelled like expensive, sterile perfume. It was the calmest, most terrifying place I'd ever been. We'd used fake resumes. They called us back in less than an hour. They were that desperate for staff. We got separated for interviews. Mine was with a man named Thomas, a narrative manager with a slick haircut and a $1,000 watch. He didn't recognize my name. I was just another applicant. "So, Lena Quill," he said, scanning my fake resume, his smile not reaching his eyes. "You've worked in public-facing roles, high-stress environments. I've learned that controlling the story is everything," I said, my voice smooth. His smile widened. "It really is. Isn't it here, at the Airy? We don't just report, we optimize." "Optimize?" I asked, playing dumb. He chuckled, eager to show off. He turned to his massive monitor and pulled up a video clip. It was a city council meeting, a woman arguing passionately for a new park. "Watch." He applied a filter. The algorithm was invisible, but her face, it subtly changed, her brows furrowed just a fraction. The corners of her mouth tightened. The passion in her eyes now looked like unhinged anger. "Our proprietary AI," Thomas boasted. "We can adjust micro-expressions in real time. We can shift the emotional resonance. We can make a hero look like a villain or a victim." He paused. "Well, you get the idea." My blood went cold. This was the weapon. "Like that hands-off Lakefall waitress," I said. "Her video, it made her look like the aggressor." "Exactly," he said, beaming. "A perfect example of a narrative that got away from its subject. If she'd come to us, we could have optimized that, made her look much more sympathetic, or, for the right client, much, much worse." He was boasting about what he'd done to me. "The rendering power for this, it must be incredible." I breathed. "Where do you—" "Right this way," he said, puffing up. Proud to give a tour, he led me out of his office, down a short hall. The brain. It was a glass-walled room, cooled to near freezing, filled with stacks of humming black servers, a single, keypad-locked door. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Ivy. "I'm in." "Wow," I said, leaning in. As I did, I tripped, my purse flying from my shoulder. It clattered to the floor, spilling a pen, my keys, and a slim black rectangle, a portable hard drive. "Oh, I'm so sorry," I gasped, bending down. Thomas sighed, impatient. As I gathered my things, my hand closed over the drive. I slid it under the lip of the main reception desk, right next to the server room door. The magnet clicked silently into place. It was a wireless beacon. I stood up, blushing. "I'm so clumsy. Thank you so much. Thomas, this has been—" Brrr! A piercing, deafening wail. The fire alarm. Red lights strobed across the glass walls, painting the room in blood. "What?" Thomas yelled, his face pale. "That's not a drill." People started to pour from their offices, a wave of confusion. "What's happening?" I yelled, feigning terror. "Mateo." A voice crackled in my tiny, invisible earpiece. It was Cassian. "He's at 7C. He just tripped their silent alarm. It triggered this one. The building is evacuating. Get out, now!" I grabbed Ivy from the stream of panicked employees. "Stairs go." We were being herded toward the exit, a mass of bodies. As we passed the main lobby, the huge video monitor on the wall, the one that usually showed abstract art, flickered. A new face appeared. Joel Dre, Corvus. He wasn't smiling, he was on an internal video call. His face a mask of cold, absolute fury. He wasn't in the building, he was somewhere else. Dark, a high-tech command center behind him. "Thomas," he barked, his voice booming over the alarm. "Lock down the servers. Now someone is in the building." Thomas froze, his face ashen. He saw me and Ivy. He saw us moving too fast. He saw the recognition in my eyes. Dre's gaze, even through the screen, seemed to slice through the chaos and find me. A slow, venomous realization dawned on his face. "Well, well," he said, his voice a calm, terrifying hiss that cut right through the noise. "The little bird has learned to fly. Hasn't she locked them down? Find them." The security guards in the lobby turned. They weren't building security, they were crows. Ivy and I didn't wait. We shoved through the crowd, diving for the concrete stairwell. We pounded down the steps, the alarm wailing. We burst through a landing on the 12th floor and stopped dead. It wasn't an office, it was a showroom. Glass cases lined the walls, and in every case, a different, ornate, golden crow, trophies. There were small brass plaques beneath them. Marisol and Maple, compliance. Crescent Wharf shipping, secured. "My God," Ivy whispered, "it's a trophy room." It was the physical proof, the link. I snapped a picture with my phone, the flash bright in the red emergency lighting. My earpiece crackled. It was Cassian. His voice wasn't calm, it was urgent. "Lena, get out of that building! Get out now!" "We're almost out," I yelled, pulling Ivy. "Mateo got the servers. Right, he's got the factory." A burst of static, then his voice tight with a new, terrible realization. "Warehouse 7C is empty." My heart stopped. "What?" "It's a ghost. Wiped clean. They've been gone for weeks. It was another decoy. He played us." "But the beacon," I said, my blood running cold. "The beacon I planted." "Ivy, where is it?" Cassian's voice demanded. Ivy's fingers were flying on her phone as we ran. "It's live. Oh, God, it's moving. It's not in the building. It's in the sub-level garage. It's in a vehicle. It's heading downtown. Fast. They're moving the main servers." Cassian's voice growled. "The real brain. They were never at the area or 7C. They're on the move. They're heading for the Glassway Tower, the technical floor. He's moving his entire operation. Right now." We didn't even run. We walked. Fast. Out of the fire alarm-filled chaos of the area, we blended in with the other evacuated tech workers. The second we hit the street, the cold air hitting my smoke-filled lungs, we broke into a sprint. "He played us," I gasped, my earpiece secure. "He made us evacuate his decoy. He knew Mako was coming." "He's not just moving." Cassian's voice came back, low and urgent, from his own car 2 blocks away. "He's consolidating. He's moving his entire operation to the Glassway Tower, his fortress. He thinks he's untouchable." We piled into Ivy's small hatchback, the engine screaming in protest. "The beacon I planted," Ivy said, her hands flying over a laptop balanced on her knees. "The security guards, they let the van leave. They're herding it, making sure it goes the right way. They want Mako to follow it. It's the decoy. Mako is chasing a ghost to the suburbs." "So we don't follow it," I said, my heart hammering. "We go where he's actually going." "Exactly." Cassian's voice crackled. "Operation Nest Swap. Mateo, you're on the Glassway elevators. Ivy, I need a new broadcast link. Lena, you're with me. Rendezvous at the West Service entrance. 5 minutes. We tore through downtown, weaving through traffic. He'll cut the building's internet, Ivy said, her face illuminated by the blue glow of her screen. He'll jam the cell towers. We'll be blind and deaf. So we can't stream, I asked, my stomach nodding. We can, Ivy said, a grim smile on her face. I'm building a mesh portal. It won't be a clean signal. It'll piggyback off 1,000 different public Wi-Fi signals from the shops and apartments around the tower. It'll be unstable. It'll be ugly. But they can't shut all of them down. The public will see something. The Glassway Tower wasn't a building. It was a monument to corporate power, a sheer cliff of dark glass. We didn't go near the lobby. Cassian met us in the service alley, a dark, wet canyon that smelled of rotting food and bleach. He's moving to the technical floor, Cassian said. All business. He was back in his element, the strategist, the general. Floor 49. The elevators will be locked to his keycard. The main stairs will be guarded. We take the maintenance shaft. He pulled open a heavy, unmarked steel door. It wasn't a staircase. It was a ladder, a narrow, vertical metal cage, slick with grease, disappearing up into absolute darkness. You don't have to do this, Lena, he said, his voice quiet, his eyes searching mine in the gloom. You're not doing it without me, I said. He started this with me. I'm finishing it. He nodded, a flicker of that pride I'd seen before. I'm right behind you. Don't look down. The climb was agony. Floor after floor, my arms burned, my shoulders ached, my hands, slick with sweat and grime, kept threatening to slip on the rungs. The only sounds were our ragged breathing and the metallic thud of our shoes on the steel. I was somewhere around floor 35 when my boot slipped. My foot scraped hard against the metal, and I lurched, my stomach dropping. I gasped, my body swinging free for a terrifying half-second. A hand, strong and instantly there, clamped onto my ankle. It wasn't a grab. It was a lock, solid, unmoving. Got you, Cassian's voice rumbled from the darkness below me. I clung to the ladder, my breath seizing in my chest. He didn't let go. His grip was an anchor, rooting me to the spot. Just catching my breath, I whispered, my voice shaking. Breathe, he ordered softly. His hand was still locked around my ankle. I took a ragged breath, then another. I wasn't scared of falling. In that moment, I knew, with absolute bone-deep certainty, that he would not let me fall. I found my footing on the rung. His hand stayed there for a second longer, a silent reassurance, then released. We kept climbing. We reached the small steel door for floor 49. It felt like we'd been climbing for hours. Mateo, Cassian breathed into his wrist. We're at the access point. I'm in the security hub, Mateo's voice came back, calm as ever. They're sending a team up. Glassway internal security crows in uniforms. I'm locking the elevators. We heard a distant ding, then muffled shouting from the main stairwell, followed by a heavy thump as they hit the locked fire door. They're trying to override, Mateo reported. Releasing dispersal agent. Non-lethal. It'll buy you a few minutes. A faint hissing sound came from under the fire door, followed by choked, angry coughs. They were delayed, not stopped. 5 minutes, Cassian said to me. He put a tool to the lock on our service door, and it clicked open with a soft snick. Let's go. He pushed the door open, and we stepped out. We weren't in an office. We were on a true technical floor. It was cold, the air vibrating with the hum of 1,000 machines. And there it was, in the center of the vast concrete floor, a room made entirely of reinforced glass, the crow's nest. Inside, racks and racks of blinking servers, the true brain, on the back wall, a red pulsing LED logo of the crowline bird. As we approached, a massive screen on the outside of the glass room flickered to life. Joel Dre was sitting in what looked like a private study, a fireplace roaring behind him. He wasn't panicked, he was smiling, a glass of something dark in his hand. He'd been waiting for us. Lena Quill, his voice boomed, amplified, filling the cold room. And Cassian Rolfo, you avoided the decoy. You bypassed my internal security. Impressive. Cassian ignored him. He was at the main terminal, the one that controlled the glass door. "He's buying time," he muttered, pulling a device from his pocket. Dre's eyes locked on me. It was like he was trying to pin me to the wall with his gaze. "You have such energy. Lena, that hands-off Lake Falls stunt, brilliant narrative control. You're wasted on him." "I'm not for sale," I spat, moving to stand beside Cassian. Everyone's for sale, Siri," Dre said, sipping his drink. "I'm offering you a job, a real one. Head of my new Narrative Integrity Division. 7 figures, starting salary. You can do so much good, or you can do so much damage. Your choice. Walk away from him. Join me." I looked him dead in the eye. At his image on the screen, "I choose the truth. You choose to hide behind glass." Cassian found the port. He jammed the device, the stinger, into the mainframe. "Ivy, I'm in," he said. Dre's smile vanished. A valiant effort. He typed something on a keyboard we couldn't see. A new icon flashed on his screen, a red, flashing skull. "Protocol molt." "What is that?" I asked. Ivy's voice screamed in my earpiece, high and panicked. "He's starting the wipe, Cassian. He's executing a cascading deletion. I'm losing the data. It's erasing itself. Get out of there." "I can't stop it," Cassian growled, his hands flying over the terminal. "But I can slow it. I can create a bottleneck. Ivy, it's all I can do. I'm buying her time." "Lena," Ivy yelled, "the mesh network is live. It's unstable, but it's live. You wanted the public, you've got them. Go, go, go." I ripped my phone out of my pocket. Ivy's app was already open. I hit broadcast. My face, wild-eyed, sweaty from the climb, streaked with grease, flashed onto thousands of screens across Lakefall. "My name is Lena Quill," I said, my voice shaking but loud. "I'm on the 49th floor of the Glassway Tower. This is the truth, the Gilded Crows. Crowline, it's all run by Joel Dre of the Urbian Fund." I held up my phone, showing them Cassian at the terminal, the glass server room, the Molt protocol flashing on the screen. "He's using a fake charity, Harbor Halo, to funnel your own city's money." I pulled up the UPC budget file Mateo had given me. "He's funding the UPC's Clean Streets initiative. He's paying his own criminals with your taxes. He's trying to wipe the data right now, as I'm speaking. But we have the proof." "They're watching." "Lena," Ivy's voice was a triumphant sob in my ear. "The viewer count is exploding, 10,000, 50,000. They're sharing the link." On the screen, Dre was no longer smiling. He was on another line, his face purple with rage. "You're trespassing, you're terrorists," he roared. "Yes, Commissioner. They've attacked my facility, 49th floor, armed and dangerous use lethal force protocols." We heard it then. Sirens. Dozens of them, not the distant, polite wail of Mako. These were the pounding, aggressive horns of the UPC. They were swarming the base of the tower. "Mako is here, too," Ivy reported, her voice tight. They're holding back. The UPC has jurisdiction. They're arguing. Lena, the UPC is coming up." The servers inside the glass room were sparking. Cassian yanked the stinger out. "That's all I can do. The wipe is still happening, just slower." He turned to me. The thundering of boots in the main stairwell was getting closer. He was calm, utterly calm. "We have 2 options," he said, his voice cutting through the noise. "We surrender to Mako, hope they get the partial data, and we spend the next year in a legal fight. Or..." He looked toward a door marked Roof Access. "We go to the roof. There's a backup broadcast antenna. A hard line. We can bypass his jammers. Get Ivy the full, uncorrupted data stream before it's gone." The UPC was pounding on the fire door. "The roof," I said. It wasn't even a choice. He yanked open a maintenance closet. The antenna wasn't small. It was a heavy-duty tripod, folded up. "Help me," he said. We each grabbed a side. It was heavy. We burst through the door to the roof stairs just as the main door to the floor exploded open. We were on the roof. It wasn't a deck. It was a sea of gravel and massive air conditioning units. The wind hit us like a physical fist. The rain, which had held off, was back, cold and sharp. "Over there," Cassian yelled, pointing to the main mast. We wrestled the antenna, fighting the wind. It was trying to rip the metal from our hands. His hand brushed mine on the pole. We locked eyes. This was it. This was trust. He was trusting my call. I was trusting his strength. "I'm patching your phone cam to the main feed," Ivy yelled in my ear. "The whole city is watching you. They see you fighting the storm." "You want the truth!" Joel Dre's voice suddenly boomed over the city feed. He'd hacked into Ivy's stream. "Here is the truth about Lena Quill." My feed split. On the other side, a new video. It was me, but it wasn't. It was the AI-generated fake from the Airy. My face, twisted, ugly. They'd spliced audio. It sounded like I was threatening Kellen Brisk, demanding money, insulting a customer. It was designed to destroy me. "No," I whispered, my heart stopping. "Cassian, he's—" "Got it?" Ivy's voice was ice. Before the fake video could even play for 2 seconds, it froze. A huge red banner flashed over Dre's feed. The text was brutal and simple. Ivy's voice, now calm and clear, spoke over the public stream. "This content has been flagged. Verifying checksum warning. This content is manipulated. Source Crowline server 49, truth rating 0%. The fake video vanished. My feed, the one of me and Cassian on a storm-swept roof, rain lashing our faces, our hands locked together on the antenna. Refusing to let go became the only feed. The city wasn't just watching us. They were watching us win. Ivy's voice, sharp and triumphant in my ear, was a victory bell. Truth rating 0%. My live feed, our faces grim and defiant in the howling wind, filled the screen again. But the victory was a split second. The heavy steel door to the roof exploded open. Not unlocked. It was torn from its hinges, the metal screaming as it crashed onto the gravel. UPC officers in full black tactical gear, their faces hidden by visors, poured out. They were weapons hot. On the ground now, hands behind your head, they roared, fanning out, their rifles aimed directly at us. "No," a new voice yelled. Before the UPC team could take 3 steps, Detective Miller and a squad of Mako agents burst through the door behind them. They were in suits, holding badges and pistols, a stark contrast to the UPC's military gear. "Stand down, officer," Miller shouted, his face pale but furious. "This is a Mako investigation. These are our witnesses." The UPC commander, the same man with the cold, dead crow's eyes from the warehouse, stepped in front of Miller, shoving him back. "This is a UPC operation. Miller, we have an active terrorist threat. They've seized the building. Now get out of my way or I'll have you arrested for obstruction." "They're not terrorists. They're whistleblowers," Miller shouted back. The 2 factions were in a standoff. Guns pointed at each other. Law versus law, on a storm-swept roof, lived for the entire city to see. A new sound cut through the wind and the shouting. A high-pitched, angry whine. It wasn't a siren, it was a helicopter. It was small, agile. A black executive mini-chopper, like a high-tech wasp. It rose over the edge of the building, battling the gale, its spotlight pinning us, blinding us. The side door was open, and Joel Dre was strapped inside. He was here, in person. His face, no longer hidden by a screen, was a mask of pure, reptilian hatred. He had lost the narrative war, so he had come for the hardware. As the chopper's skid touched the helipad, Kellen Brisk, the man from the bistro, jumped out. He looked terrified, soaked to the skin, but he was clutching an electric stun baton, the blue sparks already crackling at the tip. "Get the antenna," Dre shrieked over the rotor wash. Brisk didn't go for the antenna. He saw me. His face twisted in a snarl of humiliation and rage. He lunged, straight at me. Cassian moved. He was a blur, a shadow. He didn't pull a weapon. He didn't even ball his fist. He intercepted Brisk, using the man's own charging momentum against him. He grabbed Brisk's wrist, the one holding the baton, and twisted. There was a sickening, wet snap of bone, audible even over the wind. Brisk screamed, a high, thin sound, and the baton clattered to the gravel, its sparks dying. He crumpled, cradling his shattered arm. Cassian just shoved him to the ground, out of the way. It was fast, brutal, and precise. He had kept his promise. No unnecessary blood. Joel Dre was apoplectic. He was still strapped into his seat. He looked at his useless lawyer, then at the UPC commander. He screamed, his voice raw. "Shoot them. That's an order, sniper team. You have the shot, take her out." My blood froze. An order to execute? Live? Miller's eyes went wide. He pointed his own pistol up at the UPC commander. "We are recording this. Commissioner, you just gave an illegal order to execute a civilian on an open channel." Mako had their smoking gun. Crack ping! A gunshot. It wasn't from the roof. It was from across the street. A sniper. The bullet ricocheted off the metal antenna mast, inches from my head. The sound was deafening. A warning shot. I flinched, my heart stopping, but I didn't duck. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. I turned, my hands shaking, and looked right into the camera of my phone, the camera that was still streaming. "He's trying to kill us," I said, my voice trembling but clear. "He's trying to kill us because he doesn't want you to see this." I pulled up the UPC budget file Mateo had given me. I held my phone's screen up to its own camera, the feedback whining. "He's using your money account number 4056B from the Harbor Halo Foundation. Account number 722A to the Urban Public Safety Committee. The transfer $40 million. Your taxes." His crows. "Shut her up," Dre was screaming, a wordless sound of pure rage. He yelled at his pilot. The helicopter lifted, rising, hovering directly over us. The downdraft was a hurricane. It wasn't wind, it was a physical wall of air. The rain, which had been a downpour, turned to horizontal needles that stung my face. The heavy tripod antenna, the one we were clutching, began to walk, skittering across the gravel, pushed by the force of the rotor wash. "It's going over," I screamed, grabbing the metal leg, trying to hold it down. "Lena, let it go," Cassian roared, grabbing my arm. "No," I shouted back. "This is the proof." The antenna tipped. It was going. It was going to pull me over the edge of the roof with it. Cassian slammed into me. He didn't push me away. He tackled me with the antenna, a full body check that sent all three of us, me, him, and the heavy metal tripod crashing onto the gravel deck. We slammed into a massive steel anchor bolt for the main broadcast mast. The pain was electric, shooting up my side. I was pinned under Cassian's weight, the antenna pinned under both of us. The helicopter's wind was still trying to rip us apart, a deafening physical scream. "My hand," Cassian groaned, his voice tight with pain. I looked. His hand, the one that had broken his fall, was wedged between a leg of the tripod and the steel anchor. Blood, dark and hot, was welling up, mixing instantly with the rain. Just as Dre thought he'd won, just as he'd silenced us, something changed. "Look!" Miller yelled, his voice cracking. He was pointing, not at us, at the building across the street. The entire side of the opposite tower, a massive 50-story LED advertising screen, flickered. The ad for a new soda vanished. "Ivy." "My God, Ivy!" A simple, clear diagram appeared, visible to the entire downtown core, a flow chart. At the top, in huge block letters, Urban Heritage Fund Joel Dre. An arrow pointed down Harbor Halo Foundation. Another arrow, donation to UPC Clean Streets. And a final arrow, splitting, pointing to two logos, Gilded Crows and Crowline. It was the entire conspiracy, laid bare on a 100-foot screen for the whole city to see. That was it. The final move. The game was over. The UPC commander looked at the giant screen. He looked at Miller's pistol. He looked at Dre, screaming in the helicopter. He'd been exposed. He dropped his rifle. "Stand down," he yelled, his voice breaking. "All UPC units, stand down!" Miller didn't hesitate. "Mako, move in, arrest that man," he roared, pointing at Joel Dre in the helicopter. The chopper began to land again, but Dre was desperate. He was a cornered rat. He'd lost. He unstrapped himself and jumped out before the skids were even steady. He wasn't running for the door. He was running for me. Before I could even get untangled from the antenna, he was on me. He yanked me up, his arm locking around my throat, cutting off my air. He was dragging me back toward the chopper, using me as a human shield. "Ah!" Everyone back, he screamed, his voice cracking. Back off or I'll snap her neck. Let her go. Dre? Cashin was on his feet, his left hand bleeding, his face a mask of absolute murder. Joel, Cassian yelled, taking a step forward, his good hand raised. You want leverage, you want a Rulfo, take me. My heart stopped. I'm the one who cut you off, Cassian said, his voice a low, commanding growl. I'm the one who beat you. Let her go. She's just a waitress. She's nothing. Take me. He was offering himself, trading his life for mine. Dre hesitated. His grip on my throat loosened. Just a fraction. He was considering it. Cassian was the bigger prize. I looked at Cassian, at his bloody hand, his desperate eyes. He was willing to die for me, and I was not going to let him. I was not a bargaining chip. I was not a damsel. I stomped my heel, as hard as I could, onto Dre's instep. He grunted in pain. As his head jerked down, I rammed mine backward, connecting with his jaw. I heard his teeth click. His grip shattered. The air rushed back into my lungs. I didn't just stumble away. I spun, driving my right elbow with all my weight, all my rage, all my fear, straight into his ribs. He folded, collapsing, the air leaving him in a whoosh. Cassian didn't wait. He was on him. A single, perfect tackle that sent them both sprawling across the wet gravel, far from the edge. Cassian's fist connected once, twice. It was over. As this happened, the helicopter, now pilotless, its engine still screaming, was caught by a sudden, violent gust of wind. The rotor blade, unbalanced, clipped the edge of the building's concrete maintenance shack. A horrible sound of tearing metal. The blade snapped, the helicopter lurched, spun 90 degrees, and crashed down onto its side. 20 feet away from us, the engine coughed, sputtered, and died. Silence. Just the sound of the rain and our own ragged breathing. No one was dead. It was just over. My phone was on the ground, the screen shattered, but the little red live icon was still lit. 1.1 million viewers, and Ivy whispered in my earpiece. Her voice was crying. We got it all, Lena. The data is saved. It's everywhere. It's done. I looked over. Kellen Brisk was sitting on the ground, his broken arm in his lap, his good hand raised, babbling to a Mako agent who was cuffing him. I want a lawyer. I'll testify. I want a deal. I want a lawyer. The knot, the one that had started with a slap, was completely untied. I walked over to Cassian, and he was kneeling on the gravel, just breathing, looking at his bleeding left hand. The rain was washing the blood away as fast as it appeared. I knelt in front of him. The whole world was watching. Mako agents were securing Dre, but none of it mattered. Hey, I whispered. He looked up. His face was bruised, wet from the rain, and his eyes, I'd never seen them so clear. All the guards, all the walls, all the control was gone. It was just him. I reached out, my hand trembling, and put my palm on his cheek. He closed his eyes, leaning into my touch. I took his bleeding hand in mine. My hand was instantly covered in his blood. I held it tight. No words. We didn't need any. The rain and the distant, now peaceful sirens were the only sounds. The whole city was watching. But in this moment, it was just us. On a roof, in the storm. We were alive, and we were free. When Lakefall woke up, it was to a sky scrubbed clean. The storm was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp autumn sunlight that made the whole city look new. And everywhere, on every screen, in every coffee shop, the story was playing. My face was on the news, not as a victim, not as an aggressor, but as a witness. The hands-off Lakefall hashtag, the one I'd started in a moment of desperate defiance on a warehouse roof, had a new meaning. It wasn't just about servers anymore. It was about the city taking its hands off the truth. It was about prying the UPC's hands off the public's money. It was about ending the Gilded Crow's chokehold. We watched from the safe house, me, Cassian, and my mother. His left hand was heavily bandaged, 3 fingers in a splint where the bones had cracked against the steel anchor. My mom, bless her, insisted on changing the dressing, her touch gentle but firm, clucking her tongue at him like he was a reckless child. The news was a tidal wave. Detective Miller, looking exhausted but triumphant, stood at a podium announcing a full, top-to-bottom internal investigation of the Urban Public Safety Committee. The UPC commissioner, the one with the crow's eyes, had been suspended, pending a federal indictment. The Harbor Halo Foundation's assets were frozen. All $40 million. Crowline was gone. Its website was a dead link. The area was sealed, a crime scene, and the Gilded Crows, with their leader exposed and their money gone, dissolved. They scattered like the birds they were named for, just shadows fading in the new light. The follow-up reports were almost clinical. Kellen Brisk, his arm in a blue cast, had been indicted. His lawyer was already arguing a plea deal, claiming his client was a victim of Joel Dre's coercion. And then, Dre himself. Corvus. They showed him being led from a federal building, his face a mask of stone. He was in a crisp suit, his hair perfect, but his eyes were hollow. The anchor reported, with a note of surprise in her voice, that the magistrate had denied bail. He was a flight risk. He was going to sit in a federal holding cell until his trial. The victory was so total, so absolute, it barely felt real. The next day, Cashin went back to the warehouse. Warehouse B was a charred skeleton, the smell of smoke and wet ash still heavy in the air. I went with him. I didn't work. I just stood in his office, watching him. Mateo Rian was there. "You're sure?" Mateo asked, his voice low. "I am," Cassian said. He was looking at the blind station code on his own monitor. The ghost route, the last thread. Shut it down, all of it, the entire gray network. Liquidate the offshore accounts. Every last one. "That's a significant asset base." "Cassian," Mateo said, the closest I'd ever heard him come to arguing. "I know what it is." Cashin's voice was firm. He looked at me, his gaze steady. "It's a liability. We're clean. 100% from this moment on." He turned back to Mateo. "I want you to take the liquidated funds and move them. Create a new foundation, a real one. The Rulfo Logistics Scholarship Fund. We'll pay for trade school, logistics management, freight piloting, for any kid in Lake Fall who wants a real job." Mateo stared at him for a long moment. Then a slow, respectful smile spread across his face. "Yes, sir. I'll get it done." Cashin had kept his promise. A few days later, I went back to Marisol and Maple. I walked in during the dinner rush. It felt strange, like visiting a life I'd lived a decade ago. The smell of roasted coffee, garlic, and old wine was so familiar it made my chest ache. My manager, Mr. Davies, saw me. His face went pale. Then he broke into a huge, relieved smile. "Lena, my God," he rushed over and hugged me, which he had never, ever done. Are you okay? We all saw." "I'm okay, Mr. Davies," I said, my voice thick. Good. He let go, suddenly formal again. Your final paycheck. It's in the office, with a bonus, a large one." "Thank you." But it wasn't him I'd come to see. In the back and by the server station, two of the waitresses, Sarah and Mia, saw me. They just stopped. They dropped their trays. They ran. They hugged me so hard I thought my ribs would crack. "You did it," Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. "You did it, Lena." "No," I said, "we did it." Mia pulled me toward the employee locker room, taped to the main bulletin board, where schedules and side work were usually posted, was me. A printed-out screenshot from my first hands-off Lake Fall video, and all around it were sticky notes, dozens of them. "You spoke for me. Thank you for being brave. I made a customer apologize to me last night, and I wasn't even scared. Hands off, Lake Fall. Marie from the Canal Bar. Hands off, Janine RN." I stood there, my hand over my mouth, and just cried. I cried for the first time since the slap. It wasn't fear or anger, it was relief. It was release. I wasn't just a waitress who'd gotten into trouble. I was a part of something. I'd found my voice. My mother and I moved out of the safe house that weekend. Cassian came to help, It was the most surreal thing I'd ever seen. This powerful, dangerous man, his hand still bandaged, carefully lifting my mother's boxes of old photographs into the back of his sedan. My mom, who had watched him, silently, for days, finally walked up to him. He tensed, respectful, ready for I don't know what. She didn't say anything. She just reached up. She was so much shorter than him and gave him an awkward, one-armed hug. He froze, and he was completely, utterly still, like a wild animal that didn't know how to accept a kind touch. My mom pulled back. She was reading his lips, but more. She was reading his eyes. "Thank you," she said, her voice clear and strong. "Thank you for hearing with your heart, and not just with your ears." I watched, stunned, as a dark, dull red blush crept up Cassian Rolfo's neck and stained his ears. The king of Lake Fall's criminal underworld, or whatever the papers were starting to call him, was blushing because my mom had hugged him. That night, we walked, just walked. The city was quiet. We walked along the lakefront, the water a sheet of dark, calm glass. The air was cold, and I could smell winter coming. His bandaged hand found mine. It was awkward, clumsy. He was relearning how to be gentle with it. "She likes you," I said, a small smile on my face. "She's terrifying," he replied, and I was shocked to hear the genuine respect in his voice. We stood by the old iron railing, looking out at the water. The fight was over. The adrenaline was gone. We were just us. A man with a broken hand and a woman with a new life. "I love the truth," I said, my voice quiet, "just for him, and I love you when you stand with it." He was quiet for a long time. He didn't say, "I'll always be perfect." He didn't make a promise I knew he couldn't keep. He turned to me, his gray eyes clear in the moonlight. "I'll stumble, Lena," he said, his voice rough. "I'll be tempted by the shadows. It's the world I know." He squeezed my hand. "But I will always, always return to that direction. I promise you that." That was the most honest, most real promise anyone had ever made me. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out a single, heavy, brass key, the same kind as the safe house. "I bought a place," he said, his voice suddenly awkward again. "A small apartment, over in the Heritage District. It's in your name, all of it, clean, no strings. I want you to have a place that's safe. That's yours." He was offering me safety, a golden cage, but one with my name on the deed. I looked at the key in his hand, then I looked at him. I took the key. I felt its weight. Then I gently closed his fingers back around it. "Hold this for me," I whispered. He looked confused. "Hold it, for when we're ready." His eyes widened. He understood. This wasn't about him saving me. This was about us, building something together. He nodded, a slow, real smile spreading across his face. Our new life was normal. It was the most wonderful, terrifying thing in the world. We went to the farmer's market on Saturday mornings. We bought apples. We sat on a park bench and read, his shoulder pressed against mine. We went to a small Italian place, a real one, not a bistro, and I watched him laugh as I tried to explain why my old boss, Mr. Davies, was so terrified of him. We held hands in the daylight, and we didn't look over our shoulders. The credits of our story began to roll. Ivy, flush with cash from a consulting fee Cassian had paid her, opened her own citizen data integrity studio. Her first client was Mako, who hired her to teach them how to not get hacked. Mateo, it turned out, was now teaching nonviolent crisis resolution. He was using Rolfo Freightworks' new security trainees, teaching them how to de-escalate, how to use words and leverage, not fists and weapons. And me, I was me, just Lena. I was taking a few classes at the community college. I was thinking, for the first time, about what I actually wanted to do with my life. We had dinner at Marisol and Maple. It was our first real public date. Cassian was in a suit, but his tie was loose. I was in a simple black dress. Mister. Davies gave us the best table, the one in the corner where Cassian had been sitting that first night. It was perfect. Until the end of the meal, a server, a new girl I didn't recognize, came over, looking nervous. "Miss Quill," she asked, this was delivered for you to the bar." She handed me an envelope. It was thick, heavy cardstock, and it was pitch black. My name was on the front, in an elegant silver script. My heart went cold. I looked at Cassian. His smile was gone, and he was watching the envelope like it was a bomb. I opened it. There was no note, no message, just a single, small, perfect feather. It wasn't gold. It was silver. And under it, 4 words, printed on the card: "Corvus isn't dead, he's molting." I looked up from the card, my hand shaking, and met Cassian's gaze. He had seen it. He knew. The peace was over. The fight was done. But the war was just beginning. I put the silver feather down on the table. I looked at the man across from me, my partner, the man who would stumble, but who would always return. I reached across the table and I took his bandaged hand in mine. He gripped it, hard. We both looked at the feather, and then we both smiled. We were ready for the next storm. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'm so curious. Where in the world are you listening from? Let me know in the comments so we can connect. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Lena and Cassian. If you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and give this video a like. And if you really want to support the channel, please hit that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.